Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine, if you will, early 1900s Japan. You're looking at a group of people learning a healing practice, something we now know as Reiki. But here's the surprising part from our sources. They weren't just meditating or doing hands-on work. They were reciting.
Poetry, traditional Japanese waka poetry.
Yeah. And the question is, what could structured verse possibly have to do with cultivating healing energy? It seems separate.
It does sound completely counterintuitive to how many people understand the practice today, doesn't it?
We want to understand why this forgotten aspect of waka wasn't just cultural window dressing, why it seems to have been fundamental to Mikao Usui's original system. So what's going on here historically? Set the scene for us.
Well, you have to place it in its time. Japan, late 19th, early 20th century. It's emerging from centuries of isolation, and there was this strong cultural movement, a real push to rediscover and re-emphasize traditional arts, traditional spiritual practices. Waka poetry was absolutely central to that Japanese identity.
Okay, right. And waka isn't just any poetry. It has that very specific structure, the 5-7-5-7-7 syllable count. But here's where it gets, I think, really interesting and frankly kind of mind-bending from what the sources suggest. Waka wasn't just seen as literature back then. It was viewed and actually used as spiritual technology.
That really is the core revelation from these texts. There's this belief, deep in Japanese tradition, going back centuries. It's documented by Shinto scholars, too. The belief that certain waka were considered dharani.
Dharani, like mantras.
Functionally equivalent, yes. Think of them as sacred spells or potent incantations believed to possess actual supernatural effects. They were used for specific spiritual outcomes. Waka, in this context, were understood as functional tools for spiritual work, not just nice words.
Wow. So when Mikao Usui included 125 imperial waka, mostly from Emperor Meiji, this wasn't just him tipping his hat to the emperor.
Not just a polite nod, no. He and his early students, they were deliberately selecting what they believed were empowered spiritual tools. Tools designed to cultivate specific states of mind, specific energies.
And there's proof of this importance.
Oh, yeah. The evidence isn't subtle. It's literally carved in stone. Usui's memorial stone, put up by his closest students after he died, it was foundational, placed right alongside the 5 precepts in terms of importance for preparing the mind and spirit.
That really does put it on a different level. Okay, so how did practitioners actually use these poems in practice? It wasn't just reading them aloud, was it?
Not at all. Not mere recitation. Usui's contemporaries saw this as a very dynamic process. One prominent student, Toshihiro Uguchi, he described it as thought guidance, or shichi-zendu. Think of it as a formal spiritual pedagogy aimed at shaping consciousness.
Shaping consciousness, how?
Well, practitioners like Kaiji Tomita wrote about the goal being to become one with the essence of the poem during their preparation. This wasn't passive reading. It was an active meditation aimed at synchronizing one's own consciousness, one's energy or ki, with the spiritual frequency or intention embedded in that verse.
Ah, so using language as the conduit for an energetic practice.
Exactly. That reframes it completely, doesn't it? Seeing it as an energetic tool rather than just, inspiration.
It absolutely does. So, okay, given that context, how can someone today, maybe without deep knowledge of Japanese culture or language, actually benefit from rediscovering this aspect?
Well, first, working with reliable translations offers a way to reclaim a bit of authenticity, to connect with a historically documented core aspect of Usui's original system that has, frankly, largely been lost.
So it addresses some of those "what did Usui really teach?" questions.
Precisely. It helps ground the practice historically. And second, you absolutely don't need to be an expert in Japanese culture. The imperial poems Usui selected, they focus on really universal themes: perseverance, service to others, harmony with nature, cultivating virtue, finding peace of mind.
Things anyone can relate to.
Exactly. These principles are relevant to anyone, anywhere, regardless of cultural background.
And does engaging with them actually do anything, practically speaking?
Now, engaging with waka, even just through reflective reading, aligns beautifully with modern research. We know poetry can enhance mindfulness, deepen self-awareness, help cultivate a contemplative presence.
Which, for a healing practitioner, is gold. It enhances their healing presence directly.
It really does. So you get historical grounding, added spiritual depth, an energetic cultivation method rooted in the tradition, and you can approach it with cultural respect.
Yeah, it seems to tick a lot of boxes for people wanting more substance or connection to the roots.
Right. It addresses many common questions about the how and why of the practice's origins.
Okay, so bringing it all together then, Waka wasn't just a cultural ornament in early Reiki.
Not at all. The sources make it clear it was central. It was fundamental to how original practitioners cultivated energy and spiritual depth. It was a form of intentional spiritual pedagogy woven right into the system itself.
This deep dive really shows us, then, that these early practitioners viewed language, viewed verse itself, as a remarkably potent tool, a tool for spiritual and energetic work. So what does this all mean for you listening? If ancient traditions saw poetry-structured language, intended with specific focus, as something powerful enough that it was believed it could move heaven and earth, that it could profoundly affect the mind and spirit, what does that tell us about the potential power embedded in our own intentional practices, in our own focused use of words today? A power we might be entirely overlooking. Something to think about.